the shooter. Hatred overwhelms them and makes them want to kill.
Because in affairs of the heart, two is company, three is a crowd.